Welcome to the woods. Been a long week. Back to work after the second lockdown, and I'm not going to dwell on that. I said a couple of videos back I was going to try and concentrate on more positive aspects of what's going on and not concentrate and dwell on the problems that we all know, that we all understand. There's plenty of people out there pointing out what these issues are, and rightly so. But I'm going to try and keep it a little bit more upbeat, and this video is going to be two parts. I'm going to touch on what I spoke about in my last video, which was how do we want the future to look, and I'm also going to give you a little story about a pub I used to own, and I'll see if I can tie the two together. Maybe unsuccessfully, but we're going to give it a go. But firstly, I'd like to say, when I spoke in my last video about a vision of the future we want, or a vision of the future you want, a lot of people got involved. People contacted me in the comments section, people contacted me on Telegram, people contacted me on Facebook. And I also did a stream with White Rose and Thorn and posed the same question. So what is this future going to look like? And within a week, two content creators, Jordan and Silences Leaden, have both produced high-class, quality videos showing their vision of a future. And they're fantastic. And I would encourage anyone who's watching this, go and check them out. Go and check out White Rose and Thorn, and go and check out Silences Leaden. If you type it in the search bar, you'll be able to find it. And check out their videos. They're brilliant. And to the people that left comments and contacted me on Telegram, thank you. Feedback like that is brilliant. It's encouraging. And I hope I managed to answer any questions you asked, and I hope I got back to everyone. There was a lot of messages. But steps in the right direction. Encouraging. When I spoke about the future, I also talked about technology. And someone actually kind of hit how I see things going forward in the comments when they said a bit like the Amish, but with lasers. And I don't think that's far off. I think we will end up with a traditional future. And when I say traditional, I mean based on traditional values, traditional skill sets, but with lasers. That's if we win. If not, then the future for us is going to be slightly different. And I think we're going to end up with a parallel society. And a lot of people mentioned that as well. I think we're going to build our own communities and work for each other. And that got me thinking about the pub I used to own, which was in a large city. But within that large city was an area. In fact, there was lots of areas, and they would have, years ago, they would have been villages. But as the town grew and became a city, it engulfed those villages, and they become an area within a city. And I'm not going to say what city it was or what area it was, mainly because in a minute I'm going to talk about the local police force there. But it was a locals pub. It was a very male pub as well. It wasn't a young pub. I think the average age of the blokes that got in there was 50. The youngest was about 30, oldest in their 90s. And when I first took the pub on, I remember on the first day the local police came round and they said, look, it's a late pub, we understand that, and that's not a problem. Just take your till drawer out, put it on the drawer, or put it on the floor in the cellar, and close the front bar, keep the back bar open. It's always been that way. We've never had any problems, then you won't get any problems from us, which was music to my ears. And the pub was late. It didn't really shut before 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, the whole time I had it. The blokes that got in that pub ran a parallel, not even a society, a parallel universe. None of them went shopping. The pub was opposite a bail hostel, and the bail hostel also doubled as a halfway house. So you'd get petty criminals would be in there before they went to prison, and petty criminals would be in there when they were first released from prison. And a lot of them were drug addicts, heroin addicts, most of them. And they'd come into the pub 2 at a time, and they would walk round the front bar at about 11 o'clock in the morning, and all the old boys that were sat in there would have written out a shopping list. And these two junkies would go round to each one and collect the shopping list, disappear, come back 2 hours later with the shopping for up to 20 customers, and they'd drop the shopping off and take a tenner off of each of them. And this happened every day, or nearly every day. And there was nothing extravagant in that shopping. It was bread and cheese and ham, pickles. Simple fare. But probably 20, 30 pounds worth in a bag, and they would get it for a tenner because they nicked it from Tesco's or Asda. And I remember speaking to one of them customers and saying, haven't you got a problem with this? Haven't you got a problem with, one, giving them money which you know they're going to spend on drugs, and two, knowing that the stuff you're going to be making your sandwiches with has been stolen? And he said, if we don't give them the money, they're going to get it somewhere else. And as much as they might be robbing from Tesco's, they're not robbing from someone's house. They're not breaking into your car in the car park and stealing the stereo. And they're not robbing from any of the small businesses round here, because they know if they did, they would never get out of this pub. And the fact that they're robbing from Tesco's, we don't care. Tesco's don't care about us, and we don't care about Tesco's. And I suppose he had a point. And this went on, like I said, every day. And every 3 or 4 weeks, the two lads that came in would change. And it would be a new 2 lads. And I'd clock this, and I'd go and speak to the customers, and I'd say, what happened to the 2 last week? And they said, well, they would have been banged up. But it's okay, because these 2 will be doing it for the next 3 or 4 weeks. So you let it roll. And eventually I ended up speaking to one of the kids, one of the addicts. And it was interesting, because they had a deal with the local police. And this local police force had the highest clear-up rate of petty crimes in the UK. They solved nearly everything. And at the end of every month, they'd pick up 2 or maybe 3 of these addicts, and they'd take them into custody, And they'd put their hands up to every single petty crime that had happened. All solved. Every shoplifting offence, every burglary, everything. Bike thefts. They'd put their hands up to the lot and they'd be sent down. And they'd go to the bail hostel first, and then they'd go into Gloucester into a prison, and they'd do maybe 3 weeks, and then they'd come out back into the bail hostel. And when they came out, another 2 or 3 would be arrested, and they'd put their hands up to every petty crime that had gone on. And then in another 3 or 4 weeks, another 3 or 4 would be arrested. And this worked well for the police. Every month, they cleared up all the crime. It worked well for the local community because the houses stopped getting burgled in that area. The small local businesses weren't robbed. It worked out well for the addicts because they had a regular income, and every 3 or 4 weeks they had a holiday at Her Majesty's expense, and then back out to continue exactly where they'd left off. And this was a system that had been going on for years, and I dare say it's still going on now. And the old boys in that pub had no problem with it. They knew they weren't going to stop these kids being addicted to heroin. And they knew they were going to get that money one way or another. So figured this way at least their local community was a little safer. They were good old boys. They had a fishing club and a poaching club and an elvering club. And for those of you who don't know what elvering is, elvers are baby eels. You're not allowed to catch them. I think at the time they were fetching about £1,000 for a pint of elvers. Big money. And they'd get together, probably 10 of them, and they'd go during elvering season and they'd net the elvers, and then at 3 o'clock in the morning I'd get a phone call and have to open up the back door of the pub, and 10 blokes would pile in and with buckets and nets and blue lights flashing, searching everywhere for them. Proper community pub. And their fishing club, they'd get together in maybe 2 or 3 boats, so they'd go out sea fishing. And they'd bring the fish back. 2 or 3 of them make fish pies. One of them would do some smoked fish. One of them one year did some mackerel in a southern fried coating. And then at the weekend they'd all bring the food in and they'd swap it. And one would get some smoked fish, and one would have a slice of fish pie, and one would have something else. And everyone in the pub got some of that food. And it was the same with the elvers. Although they were worth thousands, they made sure that everybody got some, including me. Everybody got some, even they were involved in catching them or not. The same with the poachers. Venison was commonplace. Haunches of venison, wild boar from the Forest of Dean. And the poachers would bring the meat in. And they would sell some, but they'd make sure everybody got some of it. A parallel society. Barter went on a lot. A proper community. I really enjoyed it. It was a great pub. But being a place of alcohol, there were obviously incidents. And seeing as it's Sunday and I'm rambling, I'll tell you a story. I had a problem with one of the customers. He'd had too much to drink, he was being abusive. He'd moved from the front bar and was giving the old boys in the back bar grief. Started mouthing off to the bar staff and the barmaids. So I had to throw him out. And he wasn't happy. He didn't want to leave. But he'd gone too far, and I hoofed him out the front door. Out he went, and I closed the door. Now, not wanting to leave the pub, he tried to kick his way back in, which was unsuccessful. But he did manage to put a split in the door. And off he wandered, drunk, wobbling down the road, throwing curses over his shoulder. And I thought nothing else about it until about 2 hours later, when I got a phone call from the local police, who said, "We've arrested," we'll call him John, shall we? "We've arrested John, who's just put a lump of concrete through a shop window." To which I said, fine. They had also clocked him on CCTV kicking the pub door. And they said, look, we've got him on CCTV throwing a brick through the shop window. We've also got him on CCTV kicking your door. Is it damaged? To which I said, it is, but it's nothing major, and I'd rather not press charges. Too late. He's already put his hands up to it, and he'd already been charged. Nothing to do with me. So okay, he was charged, and about 3 weeks later, I get a cheque through the door for about 180 quid, which is for a new door. Cushy. Now, I could have put the 180 quid in my pocket, but actually I thought, do you know what I could do with a new door? So I went and bought one. And I had one of the local craftsmen come round, and he hung the door and painted it, put some nice brass fittings on the front. Look, the dogs. Everything's good. The following week, John comes back in, and I clock him when he comes in. He comes up to the bar. And I walk up and I say, John, what can I get you? And he says, I'm not happy. And I said, okay, have a beer. It might make you happier. He said, no, I'm not happy that I had to pay for that door. And I said, well, to be honest, it wasn't me that pressed charges. You'd already put your hands up to it. And if you hadn't kicked it, they wouldn't have done you. So it's down to you. And he said, I know, but I think you should give me my money back. And I said, well, that's great, but it's not going to happen. Now, can I get you a beer? And he said, no, I'll have a cider. So he did. I served him his cider, a pint of Thatcher's, and he drunk it. And I kept my eye on him because I thought there might be trouble. But no. He finished his drink, put his glass down, turned around, and out he went. All good. And I carried on serving. At about 1 o'clock in the morning, I shut the front bar down, turned the lights out, and went to serve the old guys in the back bar who were playing shove halfpenny and darts. Now this usually went on till about 2:30. So it would have been about that time. They're all off home, and I'm following the last couple out, and I'm saying my good nights. And I go to shut the door, and there's no door. The sneaky bastard has left the pub, gone home, got his cordless screwdriver, come back and nicked the door. So I'm stood at 2:30 in the morning on the doorstep trying to shut a pub that has no door. Now even I had to hand it to him. It made me laugh, because to his mind he had paid for the door, he's having the door, and have it he did. But it left me in a bit of a predicament. And the last two customers, once they picked themselves off the floor and stopped laughing, were willing to give me a hand. Now we obviously had to get a door on the front of the pub. But the doors to the bar are on pivot hinges and not really any good. I'm not going to be able to get the hinges out. The only door I had which would fit, barely, was the door off the gents' toilet. So we unscrewed the gents' toilet door, put it up on the front of the pub, complete with the gent sign on it, and a 6-inch gap at the bottom. But we managed to get it locked. It caused a fair few comments with the regulars the next day. I lie, for the next month or two. And I still have to take my hat off to John, because never have I heard of that happening before. And as much as I found it funny, I did actually phone the police. So I picked up the phone and I gave the local constabulary a ring and I said, "Do you know that John who booted my door in the other week?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, he's gone and nicked the door." And the copper on the other end said, "He's come back and he's kicked the door." And I said, "No, you misheard me. He hasn't kicked the door. He's nicked it. He wasn't very happy about paying for it. And when I refused to give him the money back, he took the door." Now I could hear the police laughing on the other end of the phone. And there wasn't really anything they could do about it, because it was unlikely that they were going to get the door back. But anyway, needless to say, John never came through that door again. He did try once. He didn't try again. But that's a Sunday story for you. Have a good one, people. I'll speak to you soon.